Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is the weekly chart of silver provided by netdania.com. Now, we were looking to have a rally, but we got a smackdown today, so the downtrend continues. Looking from the very, very long term, you can see I pulled two indicators here. Try to get slow ones. The slowest one is the full stochastic. That's this upper indicator. Lower indicator is the MACD. So you can see by the MACD, we are the most oversold in at least 20 years based on the MACD. Based on the full stochastic, we're the most oversold, nearing the most oversold since 2008 bottom, and then significantly before that. And there is this low that we have here. But if you look at the pattern in the slow stochastic, this is a type of pattern that we rarely see, and that's just a continual slide here. Usually it's much more up and down. So moving into the near term, the 4-hour pretty much tells the tale. We're still in that continuing downslide, downtrend. The massive spike down to 20 has not been revisited, so we're hovering above 22. But it's looking like it wants to roll over and go lower. We know the stock market went lower today. How much lower can silver go? Well, I don't know. I think the physical price may trump that slide. So let's look at what's going on in the physical price, because that's something we really want to keep an eye on. What's happening to those premiums? You can see here that for the Eagles, the best, this is comparesilverprices.com. So along the top here, they compare most of the major ones. You can see Provident, Texas Precious Metals, Kitco, APMEX. There's a lot of them on there. So the best price we can see right now for Silver Eagles is $25.68. We've got $24.80 for the Maple Leaf. $24.33 for the Philharmonic. So those are coming down very sharply, and that definitely does not indicate the type of shortage situation we were seeing before. So it does appear to be a bottleneck that is beginning to ease. Now, for the junk, we've got 1829. That's going to come out to about 24.5. So that's still going to be about a $2.50 premium over spot. That's still, historically speaking, a very large premium over spot. That's more than 10% premium over spot for junk silver, which usually trades at or below spot. So there's definitely a ways to go before the premiums even up. It may be the case that when things finally normalize, that we might actually reach a bottom and turn around. I've seen that happen in the past. Something like that happened in 2008. So before we get to the main story of the night, let's go and look at some questions. Starting off with 47th element, silver's industrial demands versus supply next decade. Stephen Lieb said on King World News, a Standard professor, Mark Jacobson, wrote a cover story on Scientific American in late 2009. He said that in order for the world to wean itself from hydrocarbons, we're going to need 4 or 5 terawatts of electricity. The amount of silver that would be needed for this is more than exists in the ground. So in the future, when silver is well above $100 an ounce, you're likely to see governments saying to people, you can't buy silver anymore. The price of silver will be going ballistic, but the mines will continue to produce because the governments will continue to need every ounce of silver they can get. When do you think demand from both industry and investment will truly outstrip supply? Well, I think it's not too far off in the future. Now, for governments to say you can't buy silver anymore, that'd be the stupidest thing they could possibly say, because we know in markets the solution for a lack of supply is a high price. And the reason why we're getting into the situation that we're getting into is because the price has been held too low, and that's what creates shortages. We don't yet have industrial shortages, and we see supply bottlenecks for investors, but those are kind of warning signs. I think if they continue to suppress the price of silver, we definitely will see those things. Now, this idea that the world needs to wean itself off of hydrocarbons, I don't buy into that. I think that liquid fuel sources are definitely the most efficient, pack the most punch. I don't buy into a lot of the peak oil stuff. I know a lot of people do, but I do not buy into the peak oil story. So definitely oil will get more expensive. I think that's more of a function of the decline of the dollar. But I think the worst thing that they could possibly do would be to shut down trading in silver. And next question, this is from Control Alt Bernanke. What if silver goes down to $10, $5, or even $1? Good evening, Brother John F. Love everything you do. I know I don't need to tell you, but don't let those people who have knee-jerk reactions to your videos get the best of you. Sometimes I see people's negative comments and feel that you started the video feeding chickens on your farm in Connecticut. They would soften up to you. Lol. Anyway, the topic says it all. What if silver goes down to $10, $5, or even $1? This is a serious question. The government, the Fed, the banksters have proven throughout the last century that they can do whatever they want, and this is not a game to them. They can enslave people with poverty, kill hundreds of thousands of people without thinking twice, and while many people have been studying silver for years with a rational eye, the irrational people who are in control continue to prove that they can do whatever they want. Sure, the price of silver could go to $10 or lower, and there would be a price disconnect, but would it realistically be covered in the news for people to take notice? I see a lot of the laymen on the internet talking about $18, but once again, they're being rational, and I believe they can take it down as low as they want due to the irrational world they created. After all, it was that first day in May a few years ago when they killed the price and didn't bat an eyelash. Thanks again. Well, if you think just about the physical silver that's out there, so if they take silver to $1, that means the yearly mining supply is worth $750 million. Do you really think that that's going to happen? Or if they take it down to $10, that all the silver mined in the world in an entire year is only worth $7.5 billion. Doesn't that seem a little bit ridiculous? Yes, I guess it's possible, and I can't imagine why people like Eric Sprott and other billionaires wouldn't buy up all the silver. It certainly would be a gift to the little guy who would be able to buy up at those prices, but I just can't see it. That's absolute insanity. I talked in my latest interview with Unconventional Finance about already the restrictions for billionaires to get into this market, because literally the pond itself is smaller than many of the fishes that would swim in it. So we're already to a ridiculously low price, not to mention the fact that at any of these prices, every single silver miner would be bankrupt, certainly primary, and any of the silver that's mined as a byproduct would be sold at a loss, so they'd be better off just stacking that. So I can't see it, but then again, I don't have perfect vision. I can't see the future, so we'll just have to wait and see what they do. Now let's get to the main story of the night. This is from Monty Pellerin's World and his blog. I just wanted to read this because I saw it on Zero Hedge and it struck me how true this is, and this is what we're facing. This is why we're stacking silver. It's called Government, a Seedy Circus Perpetually in Debt. He talks about this Larson E. Whipsnade, W.C. Fields, and talks about that character who's this very, very seedy character. And he says, I was struck by the latter description. Is there a better phrase to describe modern government than a seedy circus which is perpetually in debt? It is perfect. Government is exhausted. It, like Whipsnade's circus, is out of resources, ideas, and solutions. Government has painted itself into a fiscal and financial corner from which there is no escape. As a result of its profligacy, government is no longer able to sustain itself. That is the real reason for the Fed's quantitative easing programs. Taxes and traditional government bond sales no longer provide enough money to run this monster. QE, more properly described as counterfeiting, is a euphemism to disguise the insolvency of the government. Without the Federal Reserve, government would have to pare down dramatically. And of course, that is what needs to happen. There is not enough money to meet the levels of military spending, social spending, entitlements, debt service, and other commitments. QE was sold as a basis for stimulating the economy. While that may have been a consideration, it wasn't as important as pretending the government was not bankrupt. Of course, no economic recovery has occurred, which most anyone not infected with statist economics, feel free to substitute Keynesian, predicted. Government is now hopelessly indebted. It cannot honor its current debt obligations and social promises. Additional debt is issued to cover the debt service on existing debt. This practice is the equivalent of borrowing against your Visa card in order to make an American Express payment. It works for a short period, but it reflects the debt-death spiral that has overtaken government. As Herbert Stein intelligently observed, something that cannot continue will not. An economic Armageddon is coming. It is up to government whether this shows up in the form of fire, massive inflation, or ice, a collapse of the economy. Regardless of what the entry phase looks like, the ending is a massive depression. The problem is beyond governance or economics. Mathematics has assumed control, and mathematics is cold, unemotional, and relentless. Government is insolvent. It will ultimately dishonor many of its obligations. The longer it postpones this reckoning, the bigger the defaults will be, and the greater the pain. Larson E. Whipsnade, aka Government. Larson E. Whipsnade is now running the failing circus we call government. He's doing his best to con the people in whatever way fits his advantage. Unfortunately, this is not a comedy, and our current Whipsnade is hardly a hapless, likable con man. Government has been reduced to a smoke and mirrors machine. There is little substance left other than raw, tyrannical power, and tools are limited. Those which might be beneficial are politically unpalatable and will not be used. What we get from government is little different than the routine of the carnival barker. A major difference is the carny only grabs a portion of our wallet. Government is playing with our entire wallet and the future of our children. Government is now a facade with guns. It has failed miserably at governance and shifted its focus to survival. It is doing and will do whatever it perceives can enhance its survival chances. Citizens are considered mere marks to be exploited, fodder for the power class to use as they see fit. Charles Ponzi and Bernie Madoff, two famous hucksters, were mere gnats compared to the schemes that the American public are facing. A desperate and dying dinosaur is trying to avoid its fate, and it does not care what it has to do to accomplish this end. The damage it inflicts will make Ponzi and Madoff appear compassionate with respect to how they treated their victims. And there's the famous quote from George Washington about the danger of government. Since the time our first president, government has broken virtually every restraint the founders imposed. The Constitution is little more than a curious artifact. The rule of law is routinely violated and headed for the same historical graveyard. Washington could not imagine the fearful master we all face today. A century-long rampage has seen government break virtually everything it touched. Every program enacted has failed in terms of original and revised goals and objectives. None have stayed within budget. Many have produced results 180 degrees from intended. And I should say, really, are you sure that isn't what they intended in the first place? Such as the war on poverty, which has produced massive poverty, or the war on drugs, which has produced massive profits for the mafia. Many are bankrupt in the sense that they cannot be sustained much longer. Many will be defaulted upon. Finally, government has driven itself to the precarious position of so many of the programs it manages. It too is broke and unsustainable. Government itself is broke and unsustainable. Fittingly, it's reached the same state as most of its programs. Larceny Whipsnade is now running this failing circus and doing whatever he can to con the people. The issue is no longer whether you can cheat an honest man. The government believes, probably correctly, that they can deceive tens of millions of honest men. To do so, government is engaged in an unusually blatant propaganda campaign. Economic recovery, so we're told, began in June 2009. That was a lie. We still haven't recovered, and only the Great Depression took longer than this to recover from, and we are not out of this yet. There are still 5 million fewer people working today than would be considered normal, yet the media echoes the government line as faithfully as Pravda once did. And it continues. So, excellent article from Monty Pellerin's World. And I agree 100% with what he said. Government is now not just the U.S. government, but the governments of Europe, the governments of Japan and Australia, Canada. Most of the Western governments are now all in the same situation. They're completely insolvent, and they're going to have to renege on their obligations. There's no getting around it. There's no debating which ones are more legitimate and which ones are less legitimate. They've gotten themselves to the point where they're going to have to renege on all of them, and that's going to be a terrible price to pay for a lot of people. So the major strategy is going to be how to protect yourself from what's coming. As I've said so many times, silver and gold, but in my opinion primarily silver, are the best inflation and deflation hedges that one can get, because in a deflationary collapse, debt obligations begin to be defaulted upon. Those two assets are not anyone's debt obligation, and they rise relatively in value as the credit system collapses. On the other hand, during a hyperinflation, as the prices of everything rises, the prices of gold and silver, once it gets going, tend to go ahead of everything else, holding their value and ultimately coming through the storm into the next economic system. So an incredible time to stack gold and silver, especially silver, as we have this 22 price, and the price of the premiums are coming down, and this may be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Note that the critics who often criticize me about recommending things in the 30s, we don't see any of them coming out saying that silver's a buy. We have some of them, but the question is that if they were right then wouldn't silver be a buy now? And it never seems to get low enough for them to recommend it, so that ought to give you pause. But $22 is an incredible deal. I don't think anybody who buys at $22 silver at this point in time will regret it any time in the near future. And we'll talk to you next time.